Welcome into a Monday edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. As our friend Drello asked, where are these turkeys? 12 means 12, Alex. I think we're like 30 seconds later than we said we'd be starting. So we are underway. We thank everybody who listens to us live. You could watch on YouTube. You could watch on Twitter. Obviously, you could consume this as a traditional podcast as well, wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to recap all of our takeaways from a big weekend in the NBA. We'll talk about some players to potentially buy low on. Guys might want to sell high on. But Alex, we're still early enough in the season where maybe it's just because I'm a wuss and I don't like to take risks this early on. But like I'm still like waiting things out. Like Pascal Siakam, I'm not quite panicking on. Had a couple of good games. Came back down to earth last time out. How aggressive do you tend to be early in the season when we're talking 8, 9, 10 games in as far as adjusting your roster goes?
It depends. I mean, there are a few guys on my teams that I just like dropped or have been trying to drop right away, but most of those have been complete flyers, like Colin Sexton and guys like that. We got some interesting questions on the Friday podcast, like Jabari Smith Jr. was kind of a point of contention. I was like, Jabari's drop in this was a 10-team league. I was like, you shouldn't worry about dropping him. I don't think it's going to come back to bite you. Shannon felt the opposite. So it's more so guys like that. It really just kind of depends on if you think their production, if it's like a field goal percentage issue a lot of the time, or like a minutes issue rather than some other thing that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the field goal percentage is something that's haunted me early on in a couple of leagues. Someone like LaMelo Ball, who's got off to a really rough start shooting it. He's already started to come around. Ironically, Damian Lillard is kind of killing me in our stake league, one of our staff leagues so far. The assists have been down. He's been just terrible from three. Still hovering around 40%, so it hasn't been a complete disaster. But I think you're right to point that out. That free throw percentage, field goal percentage, those two can have the biggest variance early on. We'll go right to a few questions here. We'll try to kind of check in on the chat throughout, then open it up for more of a full Q&A later. But we have a question from Dostvivisky. I wonder how many games Brogdon will miss. Could it only be one? He dropped Brogdon for Skylar Mays, and he says he hopes he will not regret it. What are your thoughts on that decision? We see Skylar Mays, he had some opportunities at the end of last season in Portland, and whenever the minutes have been there, he's usually been pretty productive. But obviously there's a reason, not only Malcolm Brogdon, but Scoot Henderson for why he's playing those minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you'll regret it because like Nick mentioned, Scoot is going to be out for maybe another 2 weeks. And so I won't be surprised if Mays continues to see 30 minutes a game. Brogdon plays a little shooting guard. Sharp moves up just because Portland's depth is their depth is horrible. It's a lot of Tumani Kamara. It's a lot of Jabari Walker. And I think the important thing to remember about Brogdon, well, there's two things here. First, Brogdon, it's a hamstring injury. And those are notoriously hard to come back from. They have a really high re-injury rate. We know Brogdon's had leg issues in the past in terms of his durability. So I won't be surprised if he's out for at least another week, even though they're taking it day to day.
And somebody mentioned, we were talking about Jabari Smith. Clarence says he's dropped Jabari everywhere, mostly to pick up Bilal Coulibaly from the Washington Wizards. I'm with you, Alex, where I feel I don't think it's like completely out of the question that Jabari Smith could come on later in the season. We saw him play better at the end of last year as well, but we got enough of a sample, man, where even like his plus games have just not even been great fantasy games, right? Like he had 21 and 11 against the Kings, but really not doing anything defensively. Like the blocks have not been consistent. The steals have been even less consistent. It's given you almost nothing as a passer. We kind of knew that would be the case. He was 1.3 assists last season, but there's been no jump there whatsoever. The field goal percentage is better. He's shooting it better from three. It's up closer to 2 made threes per game. So that's something that you could say is maybe a feather in his cap, but he's also shooting 55% on very limited attempts from the field. And I just don't know if that changes with the direction that Houston's going. Like, I don't think this is a team that wants to change anything right now with as hot as they've been of late. Where do you come in on Coulibaly, though? Had his best game as a pro over the weekend. Super, super raw. I think Washington kind of knew what it was getting itself into with that pick. You look at the first 8 games for Coulibaly, 6.5 points, 2.9 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 0.9 blocks. But he popped for 27, 3, and 4 steals against the Nets on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, the Wizards are going to continue to be awful. I watched a good majority of that Nets Wizards game, and like Jordan Poole was at points he was like looked like the worst guy on the court, and at other
You
points
got to watch more football, dude.
well, yes, I do. But they're going to continue to be bad, right? So minutes are going to be there for Coulibaly, and look, he had the best game of his career the other night against Brooklyn. It's a steals and blocks thing. That's why you're picking up Coulibaly, because if he can continue to get 25 to 30 minutes a game, you could be looking at 2 combined steals and blocks, and then you're looking at something interesting. But he's just a really raw offensive player. They have other guys with usage. So to be honest, I won't be surprised if you end up dropping Coulibaly like you dropped Jabari Smith Jr., but I understand why you might make that change.
Here's an interesting one, Alex, from B-Baller. And I feel like we've gotten more Keyonte George questions across all platforms this year than just about anybody else. Would you drop Coby White to pick up Keyonte George? And which of those two has a better outlook for the rest of the season?
I would keep Coby White. He had a slow start to the season, but now he's picked things up. His shooting's a bit better. My only hesitation in terms of picking White over Keyonte George is I think George has a higher assists ceiling and floor. He's proven to be he's controlling the offense a lot more in Utah than Coby White is in Chicago. So if you really need assists, I think you can lean Keyonte George. But if you're just talking like general value, if you're in a points league, if you just need like roto scoring in general, I would lean Coby White, because I do worry about Keyonte George's field goal percentage, his lack of defensive stats so far. Not that Coby White's averaging like 2 steals a game or anything.
Yeah, I feel like there's some like Taylor Horton Tucker vibes with Keyonte George, which could be good or bad, especially when the way we talked about Taylor Horton Tucker earlier in his career. Like you see the flashes, like the good games, the good possessions are really good, but overall, I still don't think it's an overly friendly fantasy profile. Like if you're chasing assists specifically, then sure, go grab Keyonte George. But he's also shot 5 of 20 from the field and 1 of 9 from 3 over his last 2 games. He's not a high free throw rate guy. For as athletic and young as he is, like the steals haven't really been there. He's a guard. He's not going to block a ton of shots. The rebounding is not great. So I get the appeal with George. There could be a 2 or 3 week stretch like later in the season where he really comes on, but I have not really found myself like rushing to the waiver wire to add him anywhere.
Well, and the shooting concerns me partially because he was really inefficient in college. If this was like, oh, he's just kind of shooting poorly to start the year, he's getting used to NBA competition. He shot 38% from the field and 34% from three in college. And It's weird though, because he only averaged 3 assists, and now he's a much better passer in the NBA. He's kind of a confounding player. But yeah, it kind of depends on your format.
I wanted to ask you about Spencer Dinwiddie, Alex. I believe you have him rostered in our stake league. It's been a roller coaster, as it always is with Spencer Dinwiddie. Like opening night, terrible, only played 24 minutes. Next night, he plays 40 minutes, gives you 23 and 8. It's been kind of the same story up and down since then. With Dinwiddie, you're always going to have to live with the drastic, game-to-game field goal percentage variance. Like free throw percentage has been all over the place throughout his career, hasn't been super traceable. His 3-point shooting tends to come and go year to year. Really the assists are what you've been able to bank on in the past, but he's down to 4.8 per game so far. What are you doing with Dinwiddie right now?
So I do have him in our 16-team league, and I'm holding on to him in a 16-teamer. He's good enough for that. But if you are in a 12-team league and maybe even a 10-team league, I think you're probably fine moving on and streaming the spot, because almost any player, especially in your 10-team league, almost any player on the wire can give you Dinwiddie's stats, especially if they're on a 4-game week. Like if you just stream guys in on 4-game weeks, my main concern with Dinwiddie, he doesn't really seem to fit within their offense that well. They before Lonnie Walker got hurt, they were leaning on Lonnie Walker a lot. Dennis Smith Jr. continues to look good. They have Ben Simmons. They had Cam Thomas available. Like I think Dinwiddie's kind of falling by the wayside as like a 31-year-old who doesn't really like fit their timeline. And more of an overarching concern, he has almost the lowest usage rate of his entire career right now. 19% compared to last year's 27%. And that's the usage rate that includes assists from cleaning the glass. So I think honestly, I think it's fine to drop him.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And it's also worth noting that Ben Simmons has missed 4 of the last 5 games. And you think, if anything, that would open up the assist opportunities, the playmaking for Dinwiddie, and it's kind of gone in the opposite direction. So I don't think Simmons coming back, whenever that is, should be hopefully sometime this week. I don't think that is a boost. If anything, it's probably a loss for Dinwiddie. We had a good question about, which players still have a shot to break out this year. And it kind of ties in with one of our overarching themes, kind of some buy low players. And I want to go back to the well on the Wizards. We're still having the same Jordan Poole discussions, Alex. He ranks outside of the top 125. You're taking a loss so far. If you took him at ADP in Roto leagues, he's down to 16.4 points per game. He has played 30 plus minutes in 3 of the last 4, but we're still talking 31, 32 minutes. We haven't seen these big 38-minute nights for Jordan Poole, even in games against Charlotte and Brooklyn that have been relatively competitive. He hasn't taken more than 14 shots in the last 3 games. He's not really getting to the line at all. What are you doing with Poole?
Well, you got to hold. I understand the idea. You don't want to drop him, but I wouldn't blame you for trying to trade him, partially because it's just he does not. The hope was that he would come in and take 20 shots a game or something like that, and he in the past I think he ranked like 55th the year that Steph Curry missed in Golden State, on 14 shots a game on excellent efficiency. Now the problem is I don't think his efficiency is going to improve a ton. Last year he shot 43% from the field and 34% from 3. This year it's only a few percentage points lower on each, and the minutes aren't there. And there are a lot of times where he just looks like he is disrupting their offense more than he's helping it. So I would understand if you wanted to move off of him, but you're selling so low that I would almost just rather hang on and just be like, well, maybe this improves over the next month or so.
So, kind of in the same vein, talking about guys who maybe aren't off to the greatest start, but could still break out. Paolo Banchero ranks 86th right now in 8 category per game value. It doesn't feel like he's playing poorly by any means. Got off to a bit of a slow start through the first week, but last 5 games, he's at 24-8 with 6 assists, 1.2 steals. The 3-point shooting, I think, is what's bringing him down. Like, he got off to a really bad start there. Still shooting like 33% from 3 right now. That's dragging down his overall field goal percentage, but he's still at 47% for the year. So I think if the 3-point shooting, if you think he can become a 36% shooter consistently on decent volume, which that's the other thing. He's not even taking that many. He's under 3 attempts per game. He's at 4 last year. Banchero is somebody that I would look to buy relatively low on. And again, he's coming off of 4 of his best 5 games of the year. So maybe some people don't view it that way, but if you're looking at season long rankings, he still ranks quite a bit lower than where he was being drafted. That's somebody that I really like going forward.
Yeah. I'm really impressed with the passing has looked great so far. I think some of his increased stats lately have been due to Markelle Fultz being out for plenty of those games. But at the same time, I think the main concerns with Banchero from a category league rankings perspective is that he's not getting you threes. His percentage, especially from the free throw line, is going to harm you. And he's not really a guy who gets defensive stats. Now he's at 1.4 steals per game. He's good enough of an athlete to where I think that can stick. But Banchero is honestly never going to rank that well in Roto just because of his free throw percentage, threes, and defensive issues. But I think he is more valuable than that would suggest.
Good question on our topic of, all right, if you're done with Jabari Smith, or you tried the Jordan Hawkins experiment for the last week, we have a question: who should I target to replace those guys? Max Strus, Bogdanovic, or Jalen Suggs?
I think. Look, I'm out on Strus being I don't think Strus is like a 12-team fantasy guy. I just don't think that's who he is. He's had some nice games for sure, and I'm not trying to say that he is not rosterable, but if you take away those first 3 games, of his season, the numbers are a lot more muted. I think the assists are real. He's a very good player, but I'm not convinced that he has to be rostered. We kind of know who Bogdanovic is. He's like a guy who just consistently ranks like 80 to 120 in fantasy. So I don't really like that. That just is what it is. It's a low ceiling play. Suggs to me is interesting just because of the steals upside. He is one of the best defenders in the NBA, especially one of the best backcourt defenders in the NBA. I think the steals numbers are pretty real. The deflection numbers back that up. But the man look, he got hot from three over the past 2 games, but he is a bad shooter. And so you have to be prepared for it to like kill your field goal percentage. So some of it depends on what you need. I hate to like be wishy-washy, but that's kind of how I feel about all those guys.
Well, I think if you're looking for like somebody that I can keep on my roster for a month plus and, just kind of ride it out, then maybe you lean Bogdan or you lean Strus because, part of the reason that Suggs has had this uptick lately is Markelle Fultz has been out. Gary Harris has been out. We don't know how long those guys are going to be out. I know Fultz is not going to play tomorrow night. So, it could be another week where you're seeing elevated minutes for Jalen Suggs. But I do think at some point, that comes back around when they get, 2 of their top 7 rotation guys back. So if you're just looking for like the next week or two, I like chasing the upside with Suggs. If you're looking for a longer term solution, I would lean Bogdan or Max Strus. We've talked a lot in this pod, Alex, about Scottie Barnes and the early season breakout that he's had. If you're looking at 8 cat per game value, he is a first round value so far. He's number 12 overall. Now I've been on the side where I kind of want to ride this out, and I know he had what will go down as his worst game of the year so far in that loss to Boston over the weekend. 10-5-4, still had a steal and a block, 4-15 from the field. Are you in the camp, Alex, where if you've profited from this Scottie Barnes breakout that you're looking to sell for a more proven asset such as Jimmy Butler or Kawhi Leonard, or are you holding strong?
I would hold on this because his defensive numbers are insane right now. And I don't know if they're going to keep up, especially the blocks, and his 3-point shooting has cooled off, but that was to be expected. But the reality is like Jimmy Butler, he started the year kind of hurt. Hasn't like quite looked right so far. And we know he's an injury risk. So, and same with Kawhi, right? And the James Harden thing is messing up Kawhi a bit. Kawhi's coming off not a great game last night against the Grizzlies, oddly enough, a terrible team. So I would hold Barnes because the other 2 guys are injury risks and their ceilings, technically their ceilings are higher than Barnes, I think. But Barnes has just played so well. It's like I'm really starting to doubt whether Butler, Kawhi, their fantasy ceilings are that much higher than Barnes.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. I don't know if I like these 2 specific options. Like I'm not opposed to the idea of selling at peak value on Scottie Barnes, but with Jimmy Butler at this point in his career, you're going to wonder about games played. I mean, if you're playing fantasy basketball, the deal with Kawhi. That's just not really somebody I want on my roster. I mean, if you, I don't know, you could target. I don't know. I'm just looking at other guys in this general range, right? I mean, I don't know. Throw an offer out on like Bane or Markkanen or Anthony Edwards or Trae Young, somebody like that. I mean, if you go fishing on those offers for players who technically rank lower than Scottie Barnes but have a better pedigree, yeah, I think that's fine. I really wouldn't want to be dealing with the Kawhi issues. And it's not like he or the Clippers have looked great even when he's been healthy so far. Should I start playing BISMACK BIYOMBO, Alex? A question that it feels like we're forced to answer this at some point every year. It came a little bit earlier than we expected, but he always has his moments. Stepping in, he started now 4 games for Memphis. He's got 2 double-doubles and he has double-digit rebounds in 4 games of double-digit rebounds and 2 double-doubles. I completely butchered that. Steven Adams is out. Brandon Clark is still out. But, a big part of the reason that BIYOMBO has had this run is that Xavier Tillman has also missed time. He did not play last night against the Clippers. Tillman seems like it's going to go game to game. So there's no real timeline as far as, how much more time he's going to miss. He could play tomorrow against the Lakers. After that, they play Saturday and Sunday in a back-to-back against San Antonio and Boston. I mean, for this week, like I went out and grabbed BIYOMBO in a couple of leagues. Like I'm going to try to ride this thing out. Even once Tillman's back, he's probably not startable at that point, but I at least want to see how he's used because they clearly need this on defense. I mean, Memphis is reeling right now.
Yeah, I mean, the part of the problem with this question or wondering whether or not you should pick up BIYOMBO is like every day that you've waited, you're getting like your return on investment is riskier because Tillman might come back and then the minute split might go like, Tillman starts playing 30 minutes a game again, and then Biyombo is playing 18 minutes, and then you have to drop him. But we don't know when Tillman's coming back. And honestly, Biyombo, they don't have a lot of size. Like losing Steven Adams, Tillman's is short. Like he is short for a center. And Aldama's not really a center. He's kind of like he really is like a power forward. Sometimes he plays like a small forward. He's a Gallinari. I don't know what kind of position that is. It's its own thing. But I think Biyombo only needs 25 minutes a game, which is what he's getting right now, to be fantasy relevant. So should you start playing him? Yeah, sure.
Sticking with our theme of buy low targets, Alex, can I interest you in Mikal Bridges? Is his value sunk low enough? He ranks 58th right now in 8 cat per game.
As a buy low, sure. I think his 3-point shooting is going to improve. I think that's the main thing you're looking at right now. With Bridges, he's shooting 27% from 3. He's basically a 36% career 3-point shooter. So he should probably be averaging like 23 a game rather than 20. But I got to be honest, like Bridges was one of the guys where I wrote in like overrated picks for each round column. And I thought Bridges in round 2 was just not, I didn't like it. His steals, his defensive numbers don't reflect how good he is as a defender. I think if Bridges was really going to function as this like elite number 1 option this season, he would have done it already. And he's just not showing that from like a usage rate standpoint.
Best buy low targets in points league specifically. I think this applies to Banchero, like we talked about. This guy who was much better in points leagues last season. Somebody who you still worry a little bit about the free throw percentage specifically. We'll see on the field goal percentage. I'm pretty optimistic on that. If you start shooting the 3 better, and again, it's at 47%, so it's not really killing him right now. Does anyone else come to mind for you? I know Kate Cunningham ranks pretty low in Roto. It doesn't feel like it's a buy low necessarily because he's averaging 23 and 7 and feels like he's been really good so far. But field goal percentage is hovering around 40%. So that's something that's harming him quite a bit in Roto leagues, and obviously is not a concern in points.
Yeah. I mean, I love the buy low on Kate Cunningham in points leagues because he is shooting, 41, 30. But I honestly, I hate to make it so simple, but just go to the field goal attempts page in Basketball Reference and pick out everyone that's shooting like 40%. And that shouldn't be shooting that badly. And you can just start throwing out offers for guys because that's in points leagues. It's really like a points and a usage thing. Julius Randle, honestly, too, throw out an offer on Julius Randle in a points league because the field goal percentage isn't killing you. And then when you start shooting better, you get the boost of the points. So it's those types of guys.
Yeah, Randall might be the ultimate one right now, and I know he's played a little bit better of late, but I think a lot of people are still going to be scared off by those first couple of weeks. We'll get to more questions in a moment, but got a couple messages to pass along. Underdog Fantasy is the number 1 platform for NBA best ball and DFS player pickup contests. If you haven't tried Underdog yet, new users receive a first-time bonus up to $100 and a free 6-month subscription to rotowire.com. Just use our promo code RWNBA. That's RWNBA. Go to underdogfantasy.com or download the Underdog app. Do that right now and use that promo code RWNBA. That'll get you a deposit bonus up to $100 and a free subscription to RotoWire. We're also brought to you by Vivid Seats. The NBA season is underway, and on behalf of our friends at Vivid Seats, let's get one thing clear. Nothing beats seeing your favorite team crush it on the court to the sound of thousands of screaming fans. Every dunk, every dribble, and every heart-pounding play of your favorite team live and in person. And because Vivid Seats is the only ticketing company where you can earn rewards on every purchase, you can score amazing deals and unrivaled annual rewards all season long. Plus, they have a 100% buyer guarantee. You can be sure your ticket is as legit as your love for the game. Go to vividseats.com or download their app today. And if you use our promo code ROTOWIRE, you'll get $20 off your first $200 purchase. That's ROTOWIRE, R-O-T-W, or R-O-T-O-W-I-R-E, for $20 off your first $200 ticket purchase. Visit the app or go to vividseats.com. Vivid Seats, experience it live. How do we feel about Caris LeVert, Alex? I've been kind of shocked, watching the Cavs. They've been out league pass for me quite a bit the last couple of weeks. Even if you're just checking box scores, Caris LeVert is somebody who I feel like has burned me so many times in fantasy that I just didn't really consider him all that much, especially with the backcourt in Cleveland. But this is a team that even after bringing in Max Strus, Isaac Okoro's still in the mix. We're seeing LeVert every single night be a relatively high volume player for this offense. He's coming off of 29 and 22 points in back-to-back games over the weekend. I was watching that game against OKC last week. 16 field goal or free throw attempts, I should say, for Caris LeVert. Obviously, that's not going to be sustainable, but it's been a nice start for him, up close to 19 points per game so far.
I think LeVert's improved. They're trusting him a lot more, which I think is really important. He has improved as a defender. I saw like a nice thread on Twitter of him, playing great defense the other night. I think this is fairly real because it partially his shooting percentages are not unsustainable, and they need a guy like him. When Garland and or Donovan Mitchell are on the bench to kind of run the offense a bit, and they're really not a deep team at all. So that works in your favor as well. So I think it's fairly real. Yeah.
Good question on Gordon Hayward, somebody who's played very well for me in the stake league so far, but we have the alleged impending return of Miles Bridges that could complicate things for Gordon Hayward. And even if Bridges wasn't coming back, it's like, Hayward's getting hurt at some point. We've been through this song and dance like 5 years in a row now. So is now the time to sell on Gordon Hayward? And if so, like what range of players should we be targeting?
Now is absolutely the time to move on from Gordon Hayward. You got 9 healthy games out of him. That's a win. No, he ranks 60th right now. Everybody, if you're playing in an informed fantasy league, people who understand that Gordon Hayward is an injury risk, I'll be honest, it's gonna be really tough for you to get like a projected top 100 player for him, just because he has that stink on him and Bridges is coming back. So you have to kind of take a player back that people are really lukewarm on. Like if you can get back like Valanciunas, maybe. If you can get back, I don't know who other good examples are, but like
what about like Herb Jones, Denny Avdia, even like I hate it, but like Dylan Brooks, Devin Vassell, guys like that. I mean, Austin Reeves has been off to a slow start. Maybe you could pry him away. Again, I don't know if most managers are saying yes to that, but I think you're right that you need to temper your expectations unless you're in a league where people don't know his history and don't know about Miles Bridges and just think this can continue. So, obviously start high, don't start too high. But realistically, I think you're looking for somebody who could finish 85 to 120.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think that top 80 is great. Like I like Vassell would be awesome. I would do that in a heartbeat. Reeves, I think that's a pretty solid suggestion, but yeah, you do have to worry about Bridges and injuries for Hayward.
How many more games before we could firmly say this Killian Hayes breakout is a thing and not just rotation shenanigans by the Detroit Pistons? I wish I had a better answer. I mean, I have no idea how this rotation is going to ultimately shake out, but Killian Hayes, if you just isolate the last 6 games, 15 points, 6 assists, field goal percentage has been good. The 3-point shot looks like it's marginally improved. I mean, the percentages have been good. He's been a sub 30 3-point percent shooter or 3-point shooter his whole career. So take that, with somewhat of a grain of salt. I think even if you get like 33% out of him for the year, that's fine. But the question, I guess, more than anything is the Detroit rotation settled? Like does, Monte Morris, Joe Harris, Bojan Bogdanovic, like does those guys being out ultimately impact Killian Hayes if and when they return?
I don't think the Detroit rotation is settled. We had last night against the Bulls, we had Jaden Ivey and Alec Burks come back from injuries. Burks plays 21 minutes. Ivy plays 11 minutes. I think that will increase. Sasser goes to 20, and then Killian Hayes is down to 25. So already you have to have some concern about, is Killian Hayes going to go back to playing like 20 to 25 minutes? And then, of course, we haven't even seen Monte Morris play for this team. So I don't, and I think we have to kind of like wonder, to me, this isn't like Hayes has had he had like 5 good games. You average 16 and 6 for 5 games on some really hot shooting. But for the year, he still only ranks 133rd per game. So I have no confidence in this. Like, keep him on your roster. It's Monday, right? See what happens this week. But then if he keeps playing 25 minutes, you can let him go.
Yeah, the flip side of this is Jaden Ivey, who played 11 minutes after missing 4 games in a row with an illness, played 11 minutes yesterday against Chicago. I mean, is there any buy low potential with him, or are you just staying away at this point?
I am so far away from Jagan Ivey right now that I just no. To me, there is no buy low.
How about Daniel Gafford? I think he could be considered a buy low. A lot of Wizards players making their way into this episode, as they should. But the minutes have been all over the place for Gafford. They played a relatively competitive game yesterday against Brooklyn. He had 1 foul and he played 16 minutes. But prior to that, played 30 minutes and gave you 10 points, 9 boards, and 4 blocks. He already has a 5-block game this year as well. Multiple, every other game except for yesterday, he has 2+ blocks this season. So I'm still in on Gafford, but I'm only in it for the blocks. I'm not expecting anything else.
It's like a buy low in the sense that it's hard for me to imagine him playing less than 22 minutes a game. I just think there's a lot of times where, well, first of all, Washington's getting killed every game. So their minutes are going to be messed up every night. And I think Wes Unseld, honestly, just he puts guys in the game when he thinks they're playing well. And if they're not, he just pulls them and won't pull them back in. And some of what Washington is doing, they also like to play small now. So they're playing like Avdia, Coulibaly, Kuzma, gets some minutes at center. Gallinari plays some center for them and it's looked good. So, yeah, I mean, don't expect this to drastically change this season. But if you were asking me, would I buy low on it? Yeah, because it's hard to imagine it being worse.
Yeah, and almost everybody needs blocks, right? And I think more often than not, Gafford's going to play 20 to 25 minutes as opposed to 16 to 20. So you're going to have to live with the some of the 0 weeks. Like, he's not somebody that you're necessarily starting comfortably on a 3-game week. On a 4-game week, I feel a lot better about it. So I think if you choose to view him as more of a spot starter, then you're going to be happy with the rewards, because I think the shot blocking is good enough to at least maintain his value. Alperen Sengun, Alex, what is our take on his rest of season upside? Certainly top 50. He's in the top 50 right now. In categories, free throw percentage is likely going to continue to be an issue. He's down to 61% on the year. He's taken almost 4 per game. That's about the same as last year. He's taken more threes. He's also missing almost all of them. So that's hurting his free throw or field goal percentage, but he's still at 60% from the year. So that's not really that big of a concern unless for some reason he starts taking like 4 threes a game. The shot blocking has been a little bit frustrating, the lack of. But other than that, I mean, I love what I'm seeing. The scoring is up. The rebounds have basically sustained. He's almost doubled his assist production. He's still giving you a steal per game. I think because of some of those specific category defects, like it's going to be tough for him to break like the top 40 or top 30, certainly. But I think he settles somewhere between 40 and 50 on the year.
Yeah, I think he's certainly a top 50 guy. I think everything that he's doing right now is pretty sustainable, and you can expect a bounce up in probably free throw percentage. I think some people are going to look at his field goal percentage and say, well, can he really shoot 60 on increased volume? I think he can, because he actually has a real point guard now playing next to him that can feed him shots. Unlike like when Sengun had to be doing a bunch of stuff himself, he was getting no passing inside, no help from Kevin Porter Jr. So to me, everything that Sengun is doing right now is this is who he is.
We got a bonus Pistons question. Does Wiseman get out of the doghouse at some point and soak up some of the minutes that they'll take away from Duren to keep him healthy, or is Wiseman destined for a new team soon enough? I would say the latter, and that new team might be like the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. I don't really see the upside here. Even with Duren missing time recently, it's like Wiseman's just grabbing a few minutes off the bench. If he was never the number 2 overall pick, we'd probably not be talking about him whatsoever. And I think that luster is completely worn off. And Bojan Bogdanovic, should be back at some point this month. Obviously, Wiseman's more of a true center, but I think Bogdanovic eats into some minutes at the 4. Maybe that pushes Isaiah Stewart into the mix, alongside Bagley and Duren at center. So I don't really concern myself with any Wiseman shares right now.
No, Wiseman, like you mentioned, I mean, maybe he'll be on Barcelona with Jabari Parker sooner than later. I think you have to note that, like Monty Williams said at the beginning of the year, that they would only be playing one backup center behind Jalen Duren, that it would either be Marvin Bagley or James Wiseman. And it's not James Wiseman, so he's just not going to play.
This is an interesting one. I have a lot of Jerami Grant, Alex, so I'm curious to get your take. Is Jerami Grant a buy low target? And this listener says that he was offered Clint Capela for Jerami Grant. So he'd be getting the Jerami Grant side of this one. But let's just put that one straight up. Like, who would you rather have, Capela or Grant?
I think I would rather have Capela. I like what Capela brings from like a rebounding and blocks perspective. I will say at the same time, I do feel like Jerami Grant is a good buy low because he is a better shooter than 42% from the field. And you know, like his percentages will go up. But at the same time, he's doing a lot of this without Anthony Simons, without Scoot Henderson, everything like that. So I think I prefer the Capela side. But because Jerami Grant, he's just points. That's all you're getting from him is just points.
You're getting some threes. He's giving you like almost 2.5 threes a game, but because he's taken so many threes, the field goal percentage hasn't been good. You know, he takes a ton of free throws, almost 7 a game, and he's at 77%. So that's not helping you either. I'm still kind of holding out some hope for Jerami Grant, but like you said, I think you got to be realistic about categories, and if you need blocks and rebounds, then take Capela. Like I guess it feels like maybe Capela's been a little disappointing, but he's basically doing what he did last year, right? I mean, the rebounds numbers are the exact same. He's actually blocking more shots. You know, field goal percentage is down slightly, but free throw percentage is up, so that cancels out. I don't really think he's off to a bad start necessarily. I think this is just kind of the player that he is. The only concern would be, you know, does Okongwu eventually, you know, grab a larger share of minutes at center? But at the same time, you know, he's only playing like 21 to 26 minutes most nights, so I don't see it going much lower.
No, I think if you're in a points league, I prefer Grant. Let me clarify that. If you're in a points league, I would rather have Grant. But in a roto league or a category league, I would. It's closer to even, and I might just prefer Capela.
All right, we got one more message from Rival Fantasy. LeBron versus Jordan, Magic versus Bird, Barkley versus McHale. Basketball is synonymous with legendary player rivalries. They make the game more fun, and they give fans the storylines that raise the stakes every time those players meet on the court or come up in conversation. Now, every player matchup and head-to-head debate can be settled on Rival. This NBA season, you can play challenges where you decide which NBA player will score more fantasy points in their next game. You can play the Rival Fantasy in-house challenges or create your own and get a friend in the mix with customizable social challenges. Sign up at joinrival.com/rotowire. Do that right now. You'll get a $200 deposit match. Get in on this now while we're still early on in the 2023-24 NBA season. It's time to step up to the challenge on Rival Fantasy. We will see you in the arena. Let's see. Regular listener of the program, Free Key, says he just tuned in. What are we doing with Tyus Jones? So back we go now, Alex, to the Washington Wizards yet again. Man, I had such high hopes for Tyus Jones. I was targeting him all over the place. I guess luckily I did not get him in as many spots as I wanted. I do have him in our 16-team league. You know, he's kind of been putting up the same numbers that he was as a backup last year, which normally would be fine. But considering the jump and roll, considering what we thought he could be in Washington, it's been pretty disappointing. And it seems to be getting worse. You know, last 6 games, 7.2 points, 3.8 assists per game. You know, still giving you good like steals per minute numbers, but much like a lot of players on the Wizards, it kind of seems like they're at the whims of Wes Unseld night to night.
I don't think you're going to lose your league or like regret dropping Tyus Jones at this rate, because we were saying to draft Tyus Jones under the caveat that like he needs 30 to 34 minutes a game to be fantasy relevant. And if he's not seeing 30 minutes a game and he's not a more significant part of the offense than he was in Memphis, then he's just not someone to hold for any amount of time, really, to be honest.
Someone in my league wants to trade Dejounte Murray and Austin Reeves for Jaylen Brown. Is this a fair deal? Dejounte Murray ranks quite a bit ahead of Jaylen Brown so far this year. You know, if that matters, still small sample size. I think I would rather have the Murray-Reeves side of this. I think Murray and Brown are pretty comparable in a vacuum, and I would like to buy low on Austin Reeves. So this is a pretty easy one for me. Do you agree?
To me, this is 100%. I mean, Jaylen Brown some nights is going to be like their 4th option in Boston, and Dejounte Murray is a proven top 30, 40 player, which is what Jaylen Brown at his absolute ceiling has been can do, and he no longer has that ceiling. And then you get Austin Reeves for free, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, take Dejounte, take that side of that deal. This is a tougher one for me. Corey says, I just got an offer for Jalen Duren to take Jalen Williams. What do you think? So would you give up Jalen Duren for Jalen Williams of the OKC Thunder?
I would not. I would if I have Duren, I'm hanging on. I think their ceilings are roughly the same. Because to me, Jalen Williams had a ceiling of like 5th round, 4th round, maybe. And Jalen Duren right now is proving that he just is a 4th or 5th round value. So I would rather have Duren. Like, and some of his stats, Duren's stats are kind of muted lately because he's been dealing with an injury. So his minutes are a bit low, his stats are a bit low. I would stick with Duren.
Yeah, the thing with Duren is he's still not blocking a ton of shots, so you're kind of just targeting like mid-level points, high-end rebounds, 1 block a game, and then the field goal percentage. And I don't know if we really trust him yet as a free throw shooter. He was 61% last year. This is pretty tough for me. I mean, the thing with Jalen Williams too is he's not doing a whole lot outside of scoring thus far, and had 31 last night against Phoenix. So he's coming in hot right now, but he only had 1 rebound and 1 assist in that game. Is giving you like a steal per game. The percentages have been elite though, in 52% for a guy who basically plays on the wing. That's elite. It was elite last year as well. And the free throw percentage, he's taken he's taken 4.2 per game, and he's at 86%. So that would be one where you evaluate your roster. If you're in a category league and you're struggling in free throw percentage, I think Jalen Williams is somebody that could address that, whereas Duren's going to continue to hurt it.
Right, and Williams, his usage rate isn't that much higher than it was last year, and he, Chet's taking some usage. Giddey and Shea are going to do their thing, so I'm cool sticking with Duren there.
Cam Reddish or Skylar Mays for a 10-team points league? I'm going Mays. I can't do it with Cam Reddish. I cannot.
I have to be honest, man. Cam Reddish is a automatic do not roster for me. He's looked good lately, but like throughout his entire career, I feel like Nick and I have been doing this podcast, and there's been like a 6-game stretch where it's like, is this it? Is Cam Reddish finally doing it? And then all of a sudden he goes back to averaging like 3 points a game. So definitely pick up Skylar Mays, especially since the assists are ridiculous and are going to be harder to find on the waiver wire than what Reddish is doing.
Yeah. I think both of these guys, you're looking at it as somewhat of a week-to-week streaming spot. If you're in a daily league, even better. But 4 games this week for Portland, 3 next week, and then they have another 3-game week after that. So it's an okay schedule for Skylar Mays, but it's really more dependent on Brogdon and even more so Scoot Henderson. But that's a guy I would trust. If you're just looking for 4 to 7 games, give me Skylar Mays. Let's see. Drop Gafford for OG for Anunoby. Yes. I don't know what league this is, but do that.
I was gonna say, sir, are you in a 6-team league? But whatever league format you're in, absolutely do that.
Good question from Nicholas Lee. He asked, I hear people saying to drop Andrew Wiggins. I have also heard that. Is that realistic? And if I do drop him, who should I pick up for him? This is a 9-category, 14-team league. So in that format, I still don't know if I'm like actively trying to drop Andrew Wiggins. I mean, it's been pretty bad so far. Even the games where he's played relatively well, it's been more, real life success as opposed to fantasy. But if you play the streaming game right, you can definitely do better than what Wiggins has given you over the last couple of weeks.
Yes, the fact that it's a 14-team league makes it more difficult. If you were in a 10-team league, I would say drop him yesterday, but it's difficult. Look, I think he is droppable, like Nick said, because Wiggins, even in Wiggins' best scenario, where he's playing 30 minutes a game, like he has with the Warriors, he's like he's ranked like 80th. He's like 80 to 100 ish. And he's just not close to being there from a minutes perspective, even when his shooting comes back, which it will. Like he will not shoot 15% from 3 and 41% from the field. His defense hasn't been there. His usage is about the same as last season. I think you can stream in that spot and you're not going to regret it.
Yeah, I would just double check on, guys like, I don't know, Naz Reid, Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal, some of the usual streaming characters from the last few years. They could probably give you more than what Wiggins is giving you right now. And if you're going to drop him, just make sure you get somebody on a 4-game week, because you're in a 14-team league. You're probably not going to be thrilled with your options, but if you're getting somebody for 4 games, especially on a week where Wiggins has 2 or 3, then you're probably going to end up profiting there. Let's see. Kool-Aid Trippin asks, I don't know what to do with Bruce Brown. He's not hurting my team, but he's not helping much either. Should I keep him or should I stream the Bruce Brown spot?
I have Bruce Brown in the industry pickup league. And honestly, he's mostly valuable to me because he's like multi-position eligible. And I'm like, all right, I can put that man in at forward. But no, I don't think you should expect him to play any better than he is right now. I have to be honest, because his shooting is it's all sustainable. Like, he is not underperforming in that aspect. His usage is down 4% compared to last year, and 4% is a lot. I know like I say, I talk about usage rates all the time, and I know do it to a lot of people that doesn't like mean anything. But if you can't reach like 20% usage as a guard, that's a problem in general. And he was at 18 last year, and he's at 14 this year. So I think he's ranked 128th. It's the exact same as he finished last year. He's I would consider him a streamer. So you can keep him on your bench and play him on 4-game weeks, and it's going to be fine, but you should not worry about dropping him.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. For one, he's rostered in 21% of ESPN leagues right now. And that, that covers a wide range of settings and sizes and whatnot. But, it's not like you're dropping somebody who everybody else is hanging on to. The Pacers also don't have a 4-game week until mid-December, and they have a 2-game week this week. So yeah, I would look into that. Part of that is like, I think there's like the in-season tournament week coming up where like the schedule's not decided, but I don't think that'll be a 4-game week. So there's just not really like, later in December, they have a couple back-to-back 4-game weeks. That could be a spot to target him. But yeah, if we're talking streaming, like you're not putting him in your lineup on a 2-game week this week anyway. And if you feel like you need to make up some ground, then yeah, go grab somebody on a 3 or preferably a 4-game week. I don't think you'll regret it. Should I drop Chris Paul for Keyonte George? Man. No, I would say no. I want Chris Paul.
I also want Chris Paul. I understand why you're asking the question. I want to be clear. I would rather have Chris Paul, but I understand why you're asking. Yeah. I think
it hasn't been good for Paul lately. But it's still wildly more dependable. I think we could, like we said earlier, we could see a Keyonte George like breakout week or 2 later in the year. It's just like you got to time that out right. And I think in general, considering the limited minutes and the fact that he's coming off the bench, Chris Paul's still giving you 7.5 assists. He's still giving you a steal and a half per game. The field goal percentage is concerning. He's not making any threes. And at some point, hopefully that comes back around. But I still think, week to week, night to night, Chris Paul is going to give you more of what you want.
Yeah.
Thoughts on PJ Washington when Miles Bridges returns this week? Will he start or is he cooked? Fair question. PJ Washington, it feels like every year, has sometimes it's at the start of the year, sometimes it's in the middle, sometimes it's at the end. He has these months and these runs where he looks really good. I think he starts initially. I'd be pretty surprised if Miles Bridges is just like in the lineup right away. Certainly he could end up grabbing a spot at some point. Washington does have center eligibility in some leagues, so that's something that gives him a little bit of a boost. He's also probably a little more effective in real life than in fantasy. Like he doesn't really block shots for being a big man. He's not a great rebounder. It's kind of just points and threes. So I think there is some reason for concern here. We already laid out our concerns for Gordon Hayward as well. I think both of those guys are kind of equally harmed by Bridges.
I think the answer to both of these questions could be yes. I think he could start and could be cooked. So with the year that Bridges broke out and was healthy, PJ Washington, he ranked 107th per game, Roto, 8-cat, but only had a 15% usage rate. He's at 18 right now. Yes, I think he's going to shoot better from 3. Look, I mean, Washington's always kind of been a fringe guy in terms of like a streamer. Keep him on your bench, play him in 4-game weeks kind of a guy. But, if Bridges comes back and Washington starts seeing like 28 minutes a game, to me, that's like an automatic drop. Like, I'm not going to really worry about it.
All right. Yeah. We mentioned Gordon Hayward earlier, and this is actually a good question. We were talking about if you're trying to sell high on Gordon Hayward and now's the time to do it, who should you target? Would you take Shaedon Sharpe back for him?
Oh man. So I might,
I would.
yeah.
I think I would.
I think I would, but I did caution people in an article I wrote about like players performing extremely well that I think Sharp is like a one-dimensional fantasy player. Like he's a points guy. He does not pass very well. He's not a steals and blocks guy. He's fine from 3, but like the minutes, I mean seriously, he's averaging 39.4 minutes per game.
He's played 40
When
plus in 5 straight.
Yes. So, and he's averaging 20 a game. So when he starts playing, he played 28 minutes in the opener. So when Simons comes back, when Brogdon comes back, when Scoot comes back, is Sharp going to play 28 minutes a game and average 14 points? It's pretty possible. And then it's going to be like 1.5 assists.
Yeah.
Like you want to say yes because you worry about Hayward staying healthy, but honestly, I don't know, man. I might kind of lean Hayward on this.
Okay. So if you're looking to trade Gordon Hayward, you're looking for somebody with a little bit less confusion, I guess, as far as the role once guys come back. Yeah.
I think that so I think it's the right area of like general fantasy value to target. Like I think that's the right guy to take a swing for in theory. It's just I have my own sort of personal concerns about Shagan Sharp that I feel like other people don't necessarily have.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair enough. We got a good question on Jared Allen. Is he a top 80 player this season? Asks Luke. I mean, Jared Allen has a pretty nice fantasy pedigree, right? I mean, he was a top 60 guy last year, top 50 in per game the year before that. His final year in Brooklyn, where he split it between the Nets and the Cavs, he was closer to the 90th overall player. It's been off to a slow start since he came back. Obviously, he was injured to begin the year. Minutes have been relatively down. Last year he was a almost 33 minute per game guy. This year, through 4 appearances, he's averaging 25 minutes per game. But his minutes have gone up over the last couple of games. So I think once he's fully integrated, maybe he doesn't have a ton of upside beyond. Like I would say he could be a top 70 guy max. But I think the Cavs are adjusting to playing smaller, getting more shooting on the court. That's something that worries me a little bit with Allen, but I still think he's pretty solidly like a top 100 guy once he's fully up to speed. I mean, he's only been back for a week.
Yeah, the playing time's still been restricted, still working his way back from it was a high ankle sprain or a bone bruise. I can't quite remember. But yeah, to me, he's like kind of ranked. To answer your question, like, yes, I think he's kind of like between a 60th ranked and 90th ranked guy. Obviously, I think they want to feature Evan Mobley more. But if you're sort of asking that, wondering like, should I trade him for a guy who I think is top 80? I would try to trade him for a guy who I think is top 60. Otherwise, I would just hold and see what he does when he's fully healthy.
Zach Collins or Denny Avdia? It's an interesting one.
That is kind of a tough question. I actually have both of them in the industry pickup league. So Avdia is he's playing pretty well. I mean, I think you were drafting him hoping he would be a top 100 player, and he is. Funny enough, he started the season with like as much minutes concerns as everybody else on the roster through his first 5 games, but now through his past 4 games, he's seeing 31 minutes a game. He's got some of the most consistent minutes on the whole team. And I think what he's been doing over that stretch has been pretty real. In terms of Zach Collins, I mean, Collins has been injury risk in the past. But I don't think you have to worry about something like they stop playing him next to Wembanyama or anything like that. They're returning about the same value on the year. I don't think I necessarily prefer one over the other.
I would give slight favor to Collins for what it's worth.
Yeah, slight favor, but let's put it this way. I would not think too hard about this one.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Jalen Smith, somebody who I added in a league over the weekend. Thoughts on him? Should I consider looking elsewhere? This question asker, Johnny, says he's currently sitting in second place in a 10-team 9-cat league. I feel like he might be able to do better in a 10-team league than Jalen Smith. It wasn't like I was, he wasn't my first ad. I'm not even going to use him this week because the Pacers have a 2-game week. and they don't have a 4-game week, like we just said, coming up until mid-December. So take that into consideration. Hard to say who's available, but my first thought is you could probably do better.
I'm shocked. Yeah, I think you absolutely can do better. It's important to note that he is shooting 70% from the field and 65% from three, and seeing just 18 minutes a game. So when his shooting comes down, the points are coming down, and then he's going to average like 8 points, 7 rebounds, and there's going to be in 10-team league. There's going to be plenty of other options for you.
Is James Harden washed, rusty, or just that bad at sharing? Asked Freaky. Yeah, it's been strange. Obviously, the Clippers have not looked good since James Harden came back. But Harden, like Harden's game is just so tailored to fantasy basketball, as my voice is just completely going out on me here. He still ranks in the top 40 in per game value. Like it feels like it's been a disaster, and the on court doesn't necessarily match up with the fantasy value. But if you're just asking for like Harden specifically, I know he was going in the 50s in the late drafts that I did, like a couple nights before the season started. So it feels like this has been like a worst case scenario start. He's still a top 40 guy. I think you just hold. I think it's going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, is he washed, rusty, or bad at sharing? I mean, you're talking about a 34-year-old with recent leg injury issues that we all know doesn't take care of his body, and he's now on a team with 2 other fairly high usage guys in Kawhi and Paul George. But as Nick pointed out, he's still putting up great fantasy numbers, even though it's only been 4 games. I will say the usage rate's at only 19% after being like 30. It's kind of interesting to keep an eye on, but I think he can. I think he can be all 3 of those things, and yet still rank like top 40 in fantasy.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I took him in the 50s in one of my late drafts, and I'm still happy with it. I think it's going to be fine. If the Clippers make some sort of sweeping changes, if they keep losing, I think it's Russell Westbrook who suffers more than Harden. Good question from Henry. Thoughts on Triple J? Super inconsistent. Blocks are lowered. Will he get better? I sure hope he does, because I paid big money for him in an auction league where I need him to perform like closer to a top 20 guy instead of a top 50 guy. It has been really inconsistent. I mean, the bad nights, he's got a 5 for 17. He was 3 for 15 last night against the Clippers. The 3-point shooting has been very up and down. He's at 32% from the year, 83% at the line though, which is nice because he's taken a lot. That's a big jump from last season. But yeah, really the blocks I think are the issue here. Everything else is about in line with what you'd expect. But 3 blocks per game last season in 28 minutes. This season he's playing closer to 32 minutes per game, and he's only at 1.8. So yeah, it's a little concerning. I mean, he has not had a multi-block game now in 4 straight.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bit of an inconsistent offensive player in general, but I think he's giving you what you were looking for on that side of the ball. As far as defense goes, I think it's important to note like how a block or a steal is something that happens like for a player like Jackson like twice a game, 100 possessions. So like he could just as easily next 3 games get 6 combined blocks, or next 2 games he could have 3 blocks next game, 3 blocks the next game, and then we're not even having a conversation about his blocks because then they're at 2.4 per game. So there's no worry there.
All right, we'll go rapid fire through a few more of these, and we'll be on our way out. Jaime Jaquez, can he be useful as a streamer? Will the Heat be upping his usage? I wouldn't expect a usage hike necessarily, but I think we knew on draft night, like when he ended up there, we're like, this is the perfect Heat guy. Like I think if he was on just about any other team, I don't know that you trust them to develop him correctly. But in a roundabout way, I feel like he's benefiting from Lowry and Hero missing time, and certainly Caleb Martin as well. I mean, like Jaquez, he's technically a forward, but he can kind of do everything. And the Heat have such little depth at guard, especially point guard. That they kind of have to shift pieces around, and you wouldn't necessarily think that Lowry and Hero being out is like a 1-to-1 correlation for Jaquez, but I think it's opened things up for him. I'd be comfortable streaming him. I mean, he's a really interesting player. He's played 60 or 70 combined minutes over the last 2 games. Gives you a little bit of everything. The steals numbers have been really good. Don't expect him to block shots. I don't think that's just not really who he is. He's pretty undersized. 3-point shooting is going to be lower end. But to answer the overall question, is he a streamer? Yes, they have a 3-game week this week, and then they play 4 the week after. So maybe that's the time to use him.
He's absolutely worth the risk. And like Nick alluded to, the risk is just that last game, Kyle Lowry didn't play. The game before that, Jimmy Butler didn't play. So we have yet to see the Heat's sort of like full rotation without Tyler Hero. We kind of got that in the game that Hero went down with injury and Jaquez played 21 minutes. But yeah, he's worth the risk of dropping somebody that's underperforming to stream him.
Is Buddy Hield a hold in 12-team category leagues? Should I hold with the possibility that he will start in a new team? In a category league, yes. I'm a Buddy Hield stan, I guess. Simp. I don't know, whatever word you want to use. He's 7th in total made threes so far on the year. He's in the top 3 basically every single year. He never misses time, even with a reduced role. Like I think by the end of the year, he's going to be in the top 5. Nobody has made more threes than him, I think, other than Curry since he entered the league. Nobody's played more games than Buddy Hield since he entered the league. So you got to live with the ups and downs. I know the trade thing is just kind of hanging over them, and it's kind of a weird situation. But I will say this: if you drop him in a 12-team league, somebody's going to pick him up.
Yeah, he's worth exactly like you said. You can keep him on your roster. You can play him on the 4-game weeks. Hopefully, he gets traded and he starts. I will say though, if you're in trouble fantasy wise, like if you're in a 12-teamer and you rank 11th, you might have to drop him and make some really aggressive waiver wire moves to start climbing up the standings, depending on what's going on with your roster.
All right, let's talk Orlando Magic. We got a few questions about Fultz and Jalen Suggs. Johnny asked, is Jalen Suggs worth rostering? We got another question on Markelle Fultz. What's up with his injury? Should I drop or should I wait? There's another Suggs question in here somewhere, but it was Coby White or Jalen Suggs. That one coming from Justin. So let's start on Suggs, and we'll start with the basic question: is he worth rostering?
Yes, I think his 2 steals per game, 2.1 steals per game, I guess 0.6 blocks are legit. I know the blocks are not really an increase from what he's done in the past. The steals are, but last time I checked, which is maybe about a week ago, he was like 2nd in the league in deflections. So the underlying stats with his steals suggest that he can continue to do this. His field goal percentage is not very good, but it won't be. But yeah, roster him for sure.
Okay. And then thoughts on Fultz? I mean, we don't have any more injury news than anybody else. We just report and aggregate the news. But Fultz has already been ruled out for tomorrow's game. That will be his 5th absence in the last 6. I think they're just going to kind of keep taking this game to game. But it's worth noting that they have a Tuesday, Wednesday back-to-back. So, it might be something where they're already planning to bring him back Wednesday. Who knows? I don't have like a ton of concerns here. I mean, it's a little concerning that he was scratched when he was supposed to play on Saturday. And, tendonitis is obviously something that could stem from previous injuries. And Fultz has had plenty of those. But, in general, I guess, like, even just assuming he's healthy, he's not off to a great start. It only played in 5 games. But it's kind of a convoluted backcourt in Orlando overall.
It is. Tendonitis is tough because it's a rest injury. Like the only way for tendonitis to get better is just to not do anything. So he's just going to have to sit until it hopefully feels better. And then, that sort of a thing. I think he's a hold, because I think he's a legitimate, when he's healthy and going and he's playing 29, 30 minutes, he's like a top 80 guy. But if you're in a shallow league, I understand wanting to drop him. I would just have a little bit more patience.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Should I drop Dinwiddie, who we talked about earlier? I think we're in drop territory with Dinwiddie, but should I drop him for someone like Jordan Hawkins or Dylan Brooks, Bilal Coulibaly, or Lonnie Walker? Hawkins, Trey Murphy's going to be back soon. He was at practice today, in fact. So I think he could make his return in the next week or 2. I think that really hurts Jordan Hawkins. Brooks has cooled off a little bit. Coulibaly, it's one really nice game. I think for every game he has, like he did yesterday, there's going to be 7 or 8 that are just duds. So I would not really pick up Coulibaly. You can disagree on that if you want. I guess I would probably take Brooks over Dinwiddie. None of those options are super appealing. I mean, I guess Lonnie Walker too.
I don't I don't really like any of those options. I feel like you're in a fairly sharp league, to be honest, Nicholas. If those are really like your waiver wire options, um, I'm also trying to drop Dinwiddie in a league, and I'm finding it very difficult just because it's a 16 teamer and the options are even more thin. I don't think any of those guys that you mentioned, Hawkins, Brooks, Coulibaly, or Lonnie Walker, are going to be necessary to roster for most of the season. And I don't even think that their streaming value is that good. Um, I can't blame you for dropping it for any of those guys. Like we mentioned before, I think Dinwiddie is droppable to stream the spot for guys on a 4-game week. So if any of those guys have a 4-game week, yeah, sure, it's fine.
All right, a couple more here. Looking for steals in the category league. Robert Covington or Cam Reddish long term?
Probably. Oh man, I wish Covington was playing more than 15 minutes a game. At the same time, like, do we trust Reddish to play much more than 15 minutes per game when everybody is healthy? Not really.
How about Covington?
I I think Covington's a better player than Cam Reddish, and their minutes when both rosters are healthy are probably the same. So I technically, I guess Covington. That's a rough question. I gotta be honest.
Well, I don't know if you heard, Alex. Kelly Oubre got hit by a freaking car this weekend, so I think that helps Robert Covington at least over the next few weeks here. Yeah, give me Covington. I mean, even in 15 minutes a game, he's still. I mean, he had 4 straight games with multiple steals prior to yesterday against Indy. So yeah, he's the more dependable player. He has multiple seasons banked throughout his career in Philly, Houston, Minnesota, Portland. Where he's been like 1.3, 1.3 blocks, 2.1 steals. He's basically been like block and a half, steal and a half when the minutes are there. And even with Oubre out, I don't think Covington's playing 30 minutes, but if he could just get into like the low 20s, I think he's going to be a hell of a lot more dependable than Cam Reddish. Let's see. Do you think Jakob Poeltl will return to what he was projected as? Raptors invested so much in him. That comes from Amer. I hope so. I actually didn't get much or any of Poeltl this year, so I haven't been tracking this maybe as closely as others. But yeah, I mean the blocks are down, the rebounds are down slightly, the minutes are down about 2 per game. Everything other than that, I mean it's not like he's having a wildly disappointing season, but he did play really well for Toronto after coming over from San Antonio last year. I'm not really sure. I mean, there's a new head coach, kind of new rotations without Fred VanVleet. I think they kind of had to shake things up. Precious Achiuwa had missed some time. He was back in action yesterday against Boston, and that doesn't bode well for Poeltl. He only played 21 minutes, so I think we just kind of have to adjust expectations going forward. Like, still a guy who is rosterable to me, and probably startable for lack of better options most weeks. But the dream of him being like a top 70 guy might be dead.
I agree. I mean, when he was top 70, that was a lot of like him playing with San Antonio, and they would hand him the ball and have him do dribble handoffs, and he would get like fake assists. And that's just not really happening this year, and the minutes aren't there.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll end on this one. It's a fun one. I currently have Curry, Maxey, Paul George, and Mikal Bridges as my backcourt, and Claxton, Duren, Jared Allen, Mark Williams as my frontcourt. Okay, not bad. I'm thinking about trading PG for Trae Young. What do you think?
I think I would do that.
I think so too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, you got to. Your main concern has to be like, hey, do you have any forwards left?
Right.
So, assuming that your forward spot does not get completely destroyed by you making this trade, I would look to acquire Trae Young, because he's not even shooting. He's shooting 36% from the field, and he's still ranked 23rd in 8 cat. So, and Paul George's ceiling is not that high.
Yeah, I mean, Paul George is off to a great start. I do think that's going to come down, obviously with Harden being integrated and just, having like 4 pretty big mouths to feed in that offense. And yeah, like you mentioned with Trae Young, he's not even playing that well, and he's still having a great fantasy year. For as slight as Trae Young is, he also like never misses time. And Paul George has missed more time than Kawhi Leonard since he's been with the Clippers. So that would be my bigger concern is, maybe we talk about Paul George as a sell high guy just because of the injury history. So yeah, good point by you, because Claxton, Duren, Allen, Williams, like all those guys are centers first. So make sure you have the depth stuff figured out. But if you're comfortable just making that deal 1-to-1, I think we agree we'd both rather have Trae Young. All right, we're going to cut it off here. It's a fun 70 minutes. We appreciate everybody jumping in the chat. These streams have been really fun, and they've been getting more fun each week of the season. So we hope that you'll stick with us. Try to offer you as much advice as we can. Go check out everything over at rotowire.com/basketball. You can follow Alex on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter as well. There are 2 Nick Whalens in the fantasy space, by the way. So make sure it's the WHA1EN. I feel like I've just been like feeding this other Nick Whalen followers. But if you guys like our content, like, subscribe, especially to the YouTube page. That helps us out a bunch. And go check out our sponsors as well. Rival, Vivid Seats, and Underdog. You can find all the information in the bottom of the video description. So thank you, everybody, for listening along, and we'll be back at you next Monday.